Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to share some reflections on Matthew's Gospel for today and to tell you a little bit about the work of Episcopal Relief and Development. My name is Mike Smith. I am a major gift officer for Episcopal Relief and Development, which means fundraiser. I also have the privilege of visiting some of our programs around the world in order to write stories and take photographs that we use in telling stories of the people we work with. What do we know about this woman in the gospel reading today? We know she was a Canaanite, an outsider, a Gentile. The Canaanites lived in the Promised Land before the Israelites. They worshiped idols, making them, in many minds, the enemies of God. Jesus and his disciples had their hands full with their own followers. The disciples found the Canaanite woman to be bothersome, presumptuous, and rude, certainly unwelcome. It seems that even Jesus saw her as an outsider. He may have felt that he didn't need another problem to solve, especially for someone like her. He ignores the woman at first, then says dismissively, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Still, she persisted, kneeling and calling him Lord, demonstrating that she recognized him as the Son of God. Most women of Jesus' time were largely powerless. It would have been highly unusual for this woman to speak up, to interrupt the crowd of men who surrounded Jesus, but she was determined and faithful. She was advocating for her child, as all of us would. Because she dared to speak, she was heard. And this is where I think she teaches Jesus something, and he changes his mind. She includes herself, along with the dogs, as those who yearn for whatever table scraps might happen to fall their way. And Jesus is compelled to see her in a different light, not as an outsider, but as a person of faith, one who believes, one who longs for his saving grace as much as anyone else, including all those chosen insider people. When Jesus sees this, the woman's daughter is healed. Now, I don't believe the point of this story is that prayers will be answered if only we ask. I think there are plenty of times when we feel that our prayers go unanswered, and sometimes that can shake our faith. I see this story more as a lesson about how none of us are outsiders, even when we feel like it, and even when others try hard to make us feel like it. Many of the people we seek to serve at Episcopal Relief and Development are considered outsiders. They live in places most of us will never see, and sometimes their lives can look very different from our own. I can't think about this gospel story without thinking about the status of women around the world, about how hard it is for many to speak up, to speak truth to an audience that doesn't want to hear. It takes courage as well as faith. One of our priorities at Episcopal Relief and Development is supporting women. I've visited and learned about their lives on several trips over the years. I see women and men working hard, fighting to provide for their families. They all want the same things that I want. They want to feed their families and educate their children. In many parts of the world, those two simple things can be very difficult to achieve. Most of the people we work with are subsistence farmers. They work extremely hard to coax food from their fields, often with limited resources of seed and fertilizer and the constant threat of severe weather. They pay a lot for free public education that nevertheless requires school fees, uniforms, and books. These are big expenses for families with little opportunity to earn income. Our church partners work hard to help. They work with women to form savings groups where members agree to meet weekly, save a certain amount of money, make loans to other members of the group, and pay interest and fees on those microloans. Many of the women have started small businesses as shopkeepers or seamstresses or produce sellers. Savings groups help create economic power that many have never known, and families are the real winners. Once a year, the savings and interest are distributed to each member of the savings group, and the smiles and laughter tell you how much this means to them. Last December, a woman was counting her savings on distribution day. She told me she would use the money to make sure all her children could go to school. I met a group of women in Ghana, many of whom were widows. A program administered by our partner, Anglican Diocesan Disaster and Relief Organization, or ADRO, provides the women with small livestock, goats or sheep. The animals are an important economic asset, and as the herd grows, so does the economic potential. When the animals reproduce, the women are obliged to pass along one of the offspring to another woman in the community, thereby sharing and spreading economic opportunity. Women I met in a remote mountain village of the Philippines worked overtime on other people's rice farms after their own work was done to earn money to buy a rice mill, which is shared by the whole community. Before they bought the mill, it was women's work to thresh the rice, physically demanding and time-consuming work that requires beating the rice to separate it from the chaff. Now, men and women work shifts running the mechanical mill and can do their work faster and more efficiently. I asked them what they hope to do for their next project. They said they want to buy a four-wheel drive vehicle so they can attend ECW meetings of their diocese, many miles away. Women in Kenya participated in a program to grow passion fruit, a crop that produces 2 harvests each year and brings in extra cash. Many husbands were not inclined to participate in this women's program until they saw how lucrative it was. Suddenly, passion fruit became a family enterprise. In vulnerable communities around the world and here in this country, in places affected by natural disasters, Episcopal Relief and Development seeks to help communities recognize their own assets and strengthen their capabilities. Later on in Matthew's Gospel, in the 25th chapter, Jesus talks about how what we do to the least of these who are members of his family, we do to him. It's about how we regard others, especially the outsiders. This is what informs our work. When you support Episcopal Relief and Development through your prayers, your involvement, or your financial gifts, you are supporting all the people in a community, the ones with power and those without, women, children, the poor, the sick, those who endure the ravages of climate events, vulnerable communities of all kinds. Thank you for supporting this work. So for me, the lesson of today's gospel is really a simple charge. We will seek and serve Christ in all persons as we work to create the beloved community. No outsiders. And with God's help, we will respect the dignity of every human being. Amen.